I never thought I would be the kind of person to do something like this. My entire life, I had followed the rules, done what was expected of me. My father raised me to be responsible, to never bring shame to the family. I understood what was right and wrong, or at least I thought I did. But knowing something is wrong doesn't always stop you from wanting it. It started as a harmless friendship, or at least, that's what I told myself. I met him in a way that felt too ordinary to be dangerous. At first, he was just someone I talked to, someone who made me laugh when life felt too predictable. I liked the way he listened, the way his eyes lingered just a second too long. I should have recognized the warning signs, but I ignored them. I told myself it was nothing when my stomach fluttered every time I saw him. I told myself I was imagining the way he looked at me differently than he did anyone else. I told myself I was in control. But feelings don't wait for permission. They creep up slowly, unnoticed, until suddenly, they are undeniable. The first time we were alone, really alone, I felt it, the shift. A glance that lasted too long, a silence that held more meaning than words ever could. My heart pounded in my chest, but I didn't move away. Neither did he. It was a moment of decision, and we both made the same choice. One touch. That's all it took. His fingers brushed against mine, and in that instant, I knew this wasn't innocent anymore. My breath caught, and I saw the hesitation in his eyes. He was waiting for me to pull away, to stop this before it started. But I didn't. I told myself it was just one moment, just one mistake. But one turned into two, and then three. We started stealing time, finding excuses to be alone. It was dangerous, reckless, but I had never felt more alive. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just my father's child. I was my own person. I knew the risks. If my father ever found out, it wouldn't just be anger. It would be betrayal. He trusted me, believed in me. He had given me everything, and I was throwing it away for something I wasn't even sure was real. But the more I tried to stop, the deeper I fell. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late, the house was quiet, and I thought I was safe. We whispered in the dark, our hands finding each other as if drawn by something stronger than logic. My heart raced, but it wasn't just from fear. It was from wanting something I knew I shouldn't have. And then a sound. A door creaking open. Footsteps in the hallway. Panic surged through me as I realized what was happening. My father was awake. He was close. Too close. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And then, his voice, sharp, cold, unforgiving. Calling my name. In that moment I knew. I had been caught. The air felt thick, heavy with something I couldn't name. My father's voice echoed down the hallway, each syllable sharp, laced with suspicion. My heart pounded so hard I thought he might hear it through the walls. I wanted to move, to fix this before it was too late, but my body refused to obey. He was still beside me, tense, waiting. We both knew what this meant. What could happen if my father walked through that door? The risk we had taken was no longer just a thrill. It was a mistake unraveling right in front of us. Another step. Closer this time. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to think. There was no way out of this that wouldn't lead to disaster. The door was closed but not locked. If my father opened it, there would be no explanations, no lies convincing enough to undo what he would see. I looked at him, my mind screaming for a solution. He understood without words, his expression shifting from panic to resolve. He moved first, silent, careful, disappearing into the darkest corner of the room. My breath hitched as I turned toward the door, preparing myself. A pause. A hesitation. Then the knob twisted. The door opened just enough for my father to peer inside. His eyes searched the dimly lit space, narrowing. He had always been able to read me too well. I tried to keep my face blank, tried to steady my breathing, but I wasn't sure if I had succeeded. "Why are you awake?" His tone was suspicious, but not yet angry. Not yet certain. I forced a small, casual shrug. Couldn't sleep. He studied me for a long moment. My stomach twisted. I knew he was trying to find the lie, to piece together whatever had drawn him here in the first place. His eyes drifted past me, scanning the room. Every second stretched unbearably, the weight of his presence suffocating. "Something feels off," he muttered, more to himself than to me. My throat tightened. I willed myself to stay still, to not glance toward the corner where he stood hidden in the shadows. The air was thick with unspoken danger. If my father took even one step inside, if he looked a little harder, it would be over. I forced out a yawn, trying to make myself seem bored, uninterested. "It's just late. Maybe you're overthinking." Another long pause. My father's hand gripped the edge of the doorframe, his fingers tense. I could see the battle in his mind, the part of him that wanted to trust me warring against the part that refused to ignore his instincts. Finally, he exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Go to sleep." Relief flooded through me as he pulled the door shut. I didn't move until I heard his footsteps retreat down the hall, each one a slow release of the breath I had been holding. My hands trembled as I turned, my eyes meeting his in the darkness. We had been seconds away from everything falling apart. And yet, even with the fear still coursing through me, one undeniable truth remained. I still didn't want this to stop. The weight of what had almost happened clung to me long after my father left. My skin still burned with the ghost of his suspicion, and yet, my heart raced for an entirely different reason. I should have been terrified, ashamed. I should have been thinking about how close I had come to losing everything. But instead, all I could think about was him, still standing in the corner, his breathing shallow, his presence impossible to ignore. When I turned to face him, the silence between us was louder than any words could have been. His eyes held questions I wasn't ready to answer, but neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. There was no undoing what had already been done. I swallowed hard, my hands curling into fists at my sides. That was too close. He nodded, his gaze unreadable. "Do you regret it?" The question hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell him that this was a mistake, that we had let something reckless take control, that we needed to stop before it was too late. But I couldn't say it. Instead, I whispered, "I don't know." He took a step toward me, cautious, like he was waiting for me to push him away. I should have. I should have turned around, opened the door, ended this before it went any further. But I didn't move. My pulse pounded as he reached out, his fingers brushing my wrist. A touch so light, so careful, yet it sent a shiver down my spine. It wasn't just desire, it was something deeper, something far more dangerous. "You should go," I murmured, though there was no conviction in my voice. He didn't answer right away. He just studied me, his fingers tracing slow, absent patterns against my skin. "Do you want me to?" I closed my eyes, inhaling sharply. Every logical part of me screamed yes. But when I opened them again, when I met his steady, waiting gaze, I knew the truth.
No.
The second the word left my lips, everything shifted. His grip tightened just slightly, his body moving closer, his warmth seeping into my skin. Every breath, every heartbeat between us felt like a countdown to something neither of us could stop. This wasn't just about secrecy or a thrill anymore. This was something else. Something I wasn't sure I could ever walk away from. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made us freeze. My father's voice, distant but distinct, sent a sharp wave of panic through me. We had survived one close call, but how many more could we risk? Reality crashed back in, cold and unforgiving. I stepped back, breaking the connection between us. "You have to go.
Now."
He hesitated, but the urgency in my voice left no room for argument. Without another word, he slipped out, disappearing into the shadows just as the doorknob twisted again. This time, I was ready. This time, I lied without hesitation. And this time, I realized something that sent a chill through me. I wasn't just hiding a mistake anymore. I was protecting something I wasn't ready to let go of. Sleep never came. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. The danger, the thrill, the line we had already crossed, and the one we were bound to cross again. It wasn't just about secrecy anymore. It was about something deeper, something neither of us had spoken aloud, but both of us had felt. Morning came too soon. bringing with it a sense of unease that refused to leave. I went through the motions, pretending everything was normal, but every glance, every movement felt scrutinized. My father watched me with eyes that lingered just a second too long, like he was waiting for something to slip. I forced a smile. I answered his questions the way I always had. But inside, my heart pounded with a single, terrifying realization. He knew something. Maybe not everything. Maybe not enough to be certain, but enough to suspect. I avoided him as much as I could, finding excuses to stay out, to keep myself busy. But it didn't change the truth. I was caught in something I couldn't control, and sooner or later, it was going to consume me. When I saw him again, it was different. No stolen moments in the dark, no whispered words filled with hesitation. This time, the air between us was charged with something else. Acceptance. We had stopped pretending. "You're not afraid anymore," he said, watching me carefully. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Maybe I should be. But you're not." I shook my head. I wasn't. Not of him. Not of this. The only fear left in me was of being caught. Of losing something I didn't even know I needed until now. His fingers brushed against mine, barely there, but it was enough. Enough to make me forget where we were. Enough to make me forget the world outside of this moment. "We have to be careful," I whispered. His gaze darkened slightly, not with anger, but with understanding. "I know, but knowing didn't mean we would stop. And we didn't. Not when my father's suspicions grew stronger. Not when the moments between us became harder to hide. Not even when the walls started closing in, forcing us into tighter spaces, shorter windows of time. We had gone too far to stop now. I told myself we could keep this under control, that we could continue without consequence. But deep down, I knew better. Secrets never stayed buried forever. And ours was already beginning to surface.